The Shifting Currents of March 2026, an astrological financial market outlook for crypto and traditional markets. In today's video, we're exploring financial astrology and the key astrological events in March 2026 that may impact cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, altcoins, and traditional markets like gold, silver, and the DXY. This analysis is focusing on the collective psychology driving financial behavior to provide you with a unique strategic edge. We'll also analyze how the March 18 FOMC rate decision and press conference will clash directly with the current planetary forces. Disclaimer: these predictions are based on traditional financial astrology principles and archetypal planetary symbolism. Astrology maps energetic potentials, not certainties. We strongly advise that all traders integrate these insights with rigorous technical and fundamental analysis and robust risk management. Be vigilant for geopolitical events or regulatory shifts, as these external shocks can quickly override astrological indicators. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. And now, let's decode the astrology for March 2026, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. A financial sifting and the dawn of a new reality, March 2026 opens under a veil of introspection and reevaluation, marked by Mercury's retrograde motion through the mutable waters of Pisces. Mercury's retrograde motion in Pisces generates an information fog and price discovery chaos, leading to delayed trade clearing, intensified regulatory debates, and a critical reevaluation of prior monetary policy decisions amidst emerging energy supply shocks. The 3/3 Virgo blood moon lunar eclipse compels a deep dive into shared resources, partnerships, and past financial decisions, creating potentially confusing waters. This scrutiny culminates in mandatory liquidations within overleveraged commodity futures, as margin requirements adjust to geopolitical volatility. Retail psychology, guided by the Virgo moon, pivots towards risk aversion and utility, penalizing speculative narratives while rewarding demonstrable cash flow and regulatory clarity. As inflationary pressures from surging oil prices dissolve the Piscean dream of persistently low interest rates, a Saturnian Aries, hard reality of higher capital costs emerges. Geopolitical shifts, particularly in the Middle East, are deeply intertwined, with the separating Mars-Uranus square impacting the Taurus-Pisces relations. This manifests as the physical destruction of old energy infrastructures, signaling a rapid transition from the Petro-Dollar reserve system towards a multipolar, gold and crypto-backed regime. As vital shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz face closure and critical oil fields sustain damage, the hidden costs, 12th house themes, of maintaining US dollar hegemony become unsustainable, forcing a swift pivot towards tangible assets like gold and silver, and digital utility protocols like ISO 20022 to sustain global trade flows outside the outdated SWIFT system. The sustained influence of the outer planets paints the backdrop for March's financial narrative, highlighting systemic shifts that transcend daily fluctuations. These grand cosmic forces dictate the long-term trends and underlying currents shaping global markets. The market is currently caught in a tug-of-war between the expansive, bullish force of Jupiter in Cancer subdued by its retrograde motion, and the restrictive, sobering force of Saturn in Aries. Further contributing to market uncertainty is the persistent Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. This aspect casts a pervasive fog, challenging market identity and structure with illusions and dissolution, manifesting as continued regulatory ambiguity in the unraveling of overleveraged positions, driving panic-driven volatility in sectors like oil and benchmark indices. While this conjunction erodes confidence in fiat supremacy and destabilizes maritime trade, the applying Saturn-Pluto sextile offers a constructive counterpoint, providing the structural power for transformative change and long-term foundation building, even as it delivers a brutally bearish short-term purge of weak structures. The retrograde motion of Jupiter in Cancer early in the month suggests a looking inward phase for global markets, where domestic economic policies take precedence over international cooperation, potentially leading to fragmented liquidity across global exchanges. A push and pull between Jupiter and Saturn influences market behavior. Jupiter, in Cancer, promotes expansion and a focus on protective, home market assets, while Saturn, in Aries, introduces restrictive elements and a more aggressive, international outlook. This creates a dynamic where markets find support in defensive sectors but face resistance at points where regulatory or structural limits are tested. Jupiter provides a supportive, stabilizing floor, particularly for assets that provide security and of sustenance to the digital ecosystem, such as ISO-compliant DeFi and established protocols. Conversely, Saturn in Aries sets hard resistance limits, punishing over-leveraged positions and aggressive speculation that lacks a foundational use case. As March progresses, a powerful shift towards pioneering new ventures and embracing transformative technologies gains momentum. With Jupiter and Mercury turning direct, renewed confidence and clarity infuse the markets, signaling opportunities for growth. A selective recovery is anticipated for blockchain-based settlement tokens that circumvent traditional banking. The Mars-North node conjunction on Mach 13 acts as a beacon for decisive action, especially towards collective growth within innovative financial paradigms. This latter period offers fertile ground for bold, yet structured, investments in truly innovative crypto projects, particularly those focused on global liquidity, decentralized infrastructure, and robust solutions to systemic financial weaknesses. The Jupiter-Mercury direct motion and the Mars-North node configuration in mid-March 2026 heralds a distinct decoupling for Bitcoin and innovative altcoins, while traditional stocks may falter under the weight of an escalating energy crisis. ISO 20022 tokens and AI-integrated Web3 assets will increasingly be perceived as essential services, marking a definitive transition from the Piscean faith-based fiat era to a Virgoan, proof-based digital and a gold and code-backed financial world, signaling the twilight of the Petro-Dollar. Uranus in Taurus, the architect of disruption and innovation. Bullish for innovations, challenging the status quo. Uranus, continuing its journey through Taurus, maintains its role as the primary catalyst for disruptive innovation within established financial systems and tangible assets. With Bitcoin's 10th house and XRP's 9th house positioned here, we anticipate sudden, unexpected shifts in the public perception and value of these digital assets, particularly concerning their institutional integration and philosophical underpinnings. Traditional wealth and foundational economic sectors, such as real estate, commodities, and banking, remain vulnerable to radical technological breakthroughs or sudden revaluations. This placement suggests a continued push for decentralized alternatives to conventional finance, with an emphasis on transforming how we perceive and secure value. Uranus in Taurus, in Bitcoin's 10th and XRP's 9th houses, suggesting ongoing innovation and unexpected developments that will significantly impact established market structures and international financial exploration. Neptune in Aries, the tides of sentiment and illusion. Neutral to bearish for projects lacking substance, but bullish for genuinely visionary and compassionate innovations. Neptune in Aries, occupying Bitcoin's 9th house and XRP's 8th house, casts a veil of idealism, confusion, and collective sentiment over new ventures and shared capital. This energy fuels both irrational exuberance and profound disillusionment in speculative markets, particularly those at the cutting edge of innovation. Investment narratives can become highly idealized, bordering on unrealistic, leading to the formation of bubbles based on collective dreams rather than solid fundamentals. Fraud and deception may lurk in pioneering projects, blurring the lines between visionary concepts and outright scams, especially concerning international financial agreements or shared liabilities. The collective yearning for new beginnings can be a double-edged sword, demanding discernment. Neptune in Aries in Bitcoin's 9th and XRP's 8th houses continues to imbue these sectors with creative potential and a degree of uncertainty, fostering visionary ideas but also the potential for confusion or deception in long-term financial strategies. Pluto in Aquarius, the forces of transformation and power. Bearish for centralized power structures. Bullish for decentralized and community-driven projects, as they emerge from the restructuring. The long-term financial backdrop is dominated by Pluto's transit through Aquarius, which began in 2024 and continues through 2044. This signifies a multi-decade transfer of power from centralized banking institutions, Capricorn, to decentralized, community-driven financial networks, Aquarius. For the crypto markets, this is structurally bullish, validating the existence of Web3 and DeFi. We observe the destruction of old financial systems and the emergence of new, community-driven models. The concentration of wealth among power elites is amplified, as are hidden assets and underworld economies that seek to exert control over the collective. Expect significant mergers, acquisitions, and restructuring of market power, especially within the digital and decentralized realms. Situated in Bitcoin's 7th house and XRP's 6th house, Pluto in Aquarius continues to orchestrate profound transformations within collective structures, peer-to-peer networks, and global communities. This placement signifies intense power struggles and restructuring in partnerships, alliances, and the very fabric of decentralized work environments. Pluto in Aquarius in the 6th house for XRP and 7th for Bitcoin indicates that institutional transformation is focused on operational efficiency and regulatory overhauls. There is a hidden pressure on market structures, pointing to a fundamental transformation of collaborative financial ventures and the day-to-day operational aspects of the market. Chiron in Aries, healing the financial wounds. Neutral, with bullish potential for genuinely innovative solutions addressing systemic financial weaknesses. Chiron in Aries, affecting Bitcoin's 9th house and XRP's 8th house, highlights specific areas of financial vulnerability related to pioneering efforts, aggressive speculation, and shared capital. This is where past financial trauma, particularly from bold ventures or joint liabilities, resurfaces, demanding attention. The market is collectively grappling with its wounds around identity and initiation in new financial frontiers. However, Chiron also points to unconventional solutions and radical innovations that can heal these systemic problems, often requiring courage and a willingness to step outside traditional comfort zones to find economic remedies. Lilith in Sagittarius, unveiling hidden agendas and untapped potential. Bearish for conventional or hype speculations due to potential exposure of hidden motives. Bullish for overlooked alternative assets as their hidden value is revealed. Lilith in Sagittarius, positioned in Bitcoin's 5th house and XRP's 4th house, brings the dark side of finance into focus, particularly concerning speculative ventures and foundational assets. This energy uncovers hidden motives, insider trading, and opaque financial maneuvers, challenging conventional ethical boundaries. It also points to untapped financial potential in overlooked or undervalued assets, especially those tied to global philosophies, alternative economic models, or real estate foundations, often dismissed due to societal biases. Financial rebellion against the status quo is a strong theme, promoting unorthodox approaches to wealth creation and distribution. Lilith in Sagittarius, in Bitcoin's 5th and XRP's 4th houses, represents a potent, untamed energy that can trigger unpredictable shifts in speculative markets, private matters, and foundational structures, adding an element of wildcard influence to the month's financial narrative. North Node in Pisces and South Node in Virgo, navigating future growth and past release. Bullish for visionary, inclusive financial models, North Node, bearish for overly rigid, detail-obsessed, or declining sectors, South Node. The North Node in Pisces, until July 2026, acts as a karmic funnel, dissolving old financial illusions and pushing capital toward assets that offer spiritual or collective value, such as privacy tech and AI-driven governance. The North Node in Pisces indicates our collective karmic path forward, emphasizing growth in intuitive, compassionate, and boundary-dissolving financial sectors. This points towards emerging markets and technologies that blend finance with higher ideals, such as sustainable investments, conscious capitalism, or decentralized finance. The economy is being called to expand into areas that prioritize universal values, breaking down traditional barriers. The North Node in Pisces, in Bitcoin's 9th and XRP's 8th houses, indicates a collective evolutionary path towards embracing new philosophical frameworks and transformative financial paradigms. This karmic direction may be experienced through introspection and a reevaluation of past approaches to these areas. Conversely, the South Node in Virgo signifies a collective need to release past patterns of obsessive analysis, perfectionism, and overly critical, risk-averse approaches, affecting Bitcoin's 3rd house and XRP's 2nd house. We must shed attachment to rigid systems and excessive detail in favor of a more holistic and intuitive financial outlook. Key astrological events in March 2026, March 2nd, Mars enters Pisces, navigating submerged currents and shared resources. On March 2, 2026, the entry of Mars into the mutable water sign of Pisces signals a shift in market energy from overt assertion to more intuitive, and at times, opaque drivers. In archetypal financial astrology, Mars represents the heat of action, volatility, and the initiative required to move markets. When traversing Pisces, this energy becomes filtered through a lens of dissolution and emotional sensitivity. This transit often replaces clear-cut strategies with actions driven by hidden forces or collective sentiment. Upon entering Pisces, the immediate sesquisquare to Jupiter suggests an environment where speculative fervor may build without a sturdy foundation, leading to a neutral but tense market sentiment where expansion is desired but the direction remains clouded by idealism. For Bitcoin, this transit activates the 8th house of the whole sign chart, a sector traditionally associated with shared resources, debt, taxes, and the underworld of finance. Mars in this position can trigger sudden movements concerning liquidity, institutional holdings, or the restructuring of leveraged positions. Because Pisces is involved, these shifts may stem from unseen psychological factors or intuitive reactions to global liquidity rather than raw data. Investors may find themselves dealing with complex financial entanglements or hidden market cycles that demand a more fluid, less rigid approach to risk management. The drive here is not merely for profit, but for a transformative release of old financial structures. Simultaneously, XRP experiences this transit through its 7th house of partnerships, legal contracts, and open competition. Mars in the 7th house typically brings heat to interpersonal and professional relationships, but in Pisces, this energy can manifest as passive-aggressive maneuvers or strategic retreats. There is a potential for significant developments in legal matters or public-facing agreements, though the Piscean influence suggests that clarity may be elusive. Action regarding partnerships will likely be dictated by the prevailing emotional zeitgeist or behind-the-scenes negotiations. Market participants should be wary of confusing signals in public discourse, as the boundary between ally and competitor becomes increasingly porous. As the month progresses, the intensity of Mars in Pisces heightens through a series of significant alignments. The conjunction with the North Node on March 13 suggests a fated or collective drive toward a specific financial direction, though the subsequent square to Lilith on March 14 introduces a disruptive, rebellious element that could challenge established narratives. The atmosphere shifts toward the end of the month as Mars forms a harmonious trine to Jupiter on March 22. This aspect facilitates a more effective flow of energy, allowing the previously vague or idealistic impulses to find a productive outlet. While the early part of the month is characterized by speculative uncertainty, the closing weeks offer a window where compassionate or intuitive action can lead to more expansive and grounded growth. March 3, lunar eclipse and full blood moon in Virgo. A financial reckoning. The sovereign fog and the Great Reserve transition. The Virgo blood moon lunar eclipse on March 3, 3-3, marks a potent period of culmination and profound revelation within financial markets, acting as a full moon on steroids. This lunation ushers in a period of reevaluation, prompting a bearish sentiment for assets deemed overvalued or inefficient. It is a moment of heightened volatility, exposing hidden truths and triggering sudden reversals, with its energetic influence extending through the subsequent waning phase and setting the tone for the next 6 months. Historically, a Virgo full moon marks the harvest of the laborer. When it is an eclipse, the laborer, retail, often feels cheated by the priest ruler, Pisces' 12th house. This axis creates a dynamic where the masses realize that the math, Virgo, of the financial system no longer adds up due to the delusion, Pisces, of the leadership. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries is the signature of the new era. The last time these planets met, we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the USSR. We are now witnessing the collapse of the Petro-Dollar unipolar world, giving way to the Aquarian multipolar world of decentralized ledgers and commodity-backed digital assets. The heartbeat of the market, rulers, masses, and the Virgo-Pisces axis. In financial astrology, the sun-moon cycle represents the fundamental heartbeat of the market. The sun embodies the rulers, regulators, central banks, and market leaders who dictate the supply side, while the moon signifies the masses, retail sentiment, public demand, and the collective emotional tides of traders. A full moon signifies the peak of this cycle, bringing to fruition matters initiated at the prior new moon and often marking cyclical tops or bottoms. This particular lunar eclipse, amplifying the full moon's power, creates maximum tension between conscious will, solar, and unconscious response, lunar, making it a powerful engine of revelation. The Virgo-Pisces axis, activated by this eclipse, fundamentally governs the health and integrity of financial systems. The moon in Virgo, positioned in the 6th house in whole sign astrology, emphasizes meticulous analysis, caution, and the tangible machinery of the economy, labor, supply lines, technical details, and data. It represents the retail trader, focused on daily charts and practical safety and yield. Conversely, the sun in Pisces, residing in the 12th house, embodies the intangibles, big oil, debt, hidden agendas, and the collective subconscious. This house is associated with powerful institutions, central banks, and whales operating behind the scenes, often through opaque leverage and nebulous global capital flows. The opposition between these two forces signals a showdown between the visible, process-driven market floor and the concealed power structures that set the rules of the game. A clash of realities, market recalibration and emotional reset. This 3-3 eclipse suggests a volatile emotional reset for retail participants, likely manifesting as knee-jerk reactions to news. Investors may face a panic wash, forced to reconcile idealistic aspirations with the cold reality of balance sheets. This psychological shift often precipitates a bearish to neutral market opening as individual investors second-guess their positions and grapple with underlying truths. Historically, full moons on the Virgo-Pisces axis coincide with crises of information, scandals, data leaks, or regulatory clarifications that expose fraudulent or poorly constructed ventures from viable projects. The dynamic interplay between the sun in the 12th house, representing hidden institutional moves, and the moon in the 6th house, representing the everyday market participants' strategies and psychology, means that concealed actions by powerful entities will directly impact retail traders. This creates a clash of realities, where the complexity of macro shifts can overwhelm retail traders, leading to panic selling. Paradoxically, this widespread selling by the masses is often absorbed by the same, hidden institutional buyers represented by the Pisces stellium, facilitating a shrewd redistribution of assets. This period demands audits, accountability, and a pruning of speculative excesses, as markets prioritize technical analysis and regulatory clarity. Following the eclipse, the market experiences an intensifying Virgo and analytical impulse, forcing a confrontation with operational inefficiencies and vulnerabilities. Cycle completion and structural realignment. This Virgo blood moon lunar eclipse marks the completion of a 6-month cycle. On one level, it concludes a cycle initiated by the new moon in Virgo, where seeds of financial health and debt restructuring were first sown. On another, it culminates a phase which initiated volatility in the oil and arms trade. The eclipse amplifies themes of operational efficiency, Virgo, versus hidden systemic risks, 12th house, signaling the end of an era driven by volatile energy and the beginning of a new one focused on restructuring, transparency, and long-term planning. The presence of Saturn and Neptune in Aries adds an urgent layer to this financial recalibration. Geopolitical shocks, such as the conflicts in the Middle East or disruptions to critical supply lines like the Strait of Hormuz, can significantly disrupt traditional asset flows. Such events accelerate a structural realignment of global reserve systems, potentially hastening the transition from the Petro-Dollar to gold and crypto-based reserves. Over the next 2 weeks, as the moon wanes from Virgo, corrections will phase in, setting the emotional and psychological tone for the coming months and forcing a practical recalibration of market expectations and systemic foundations. Global macro trend, the transition of reserves. The Virgo blood moon lunar eclipse marks a decisive turning point in the global financial landscape, illuminating the profound tension between the 12th house of hidden institutional strategies and the 6th house of logistical, ground-level reality. Within the Western tropical whole sign house system, this eclipse occurs on the Virgo-Pisces axis, a mutable opposition that pits the meticulous, math-driven scrutiny of the 6th house against the vast, boundary-dissolving specimen of the 12th house. This archetypal harvest of the laborer arrives at a moment when the retail sector, represented by the moon in Virgo, begins to realize that the fundamental math of the global financial system no longer aligns with the delusion or opaque policies of the sovereign leadership represented by the sun in Pisces. Historically, such eclipses signal the climax of hidden trends, forcing the market to reconcile rational assessment with collective emotional volatility. The heavy concentration of planetary energy in the 12th house, including the Sun, Mercury Retrograde, Venus, and Mars in Pisces, suggests that a lifeblood of the legacy financial system is being obscured or drained behind a veil of secrecy. This Piscean stellium reflects a period of intense, hidden central bank negotiations and the upheavals of policy as sovereign entities seek alternatives to the aging petrodollar denominated order. The eclipse acts as a catalyst, making these hidden agendas visible and forcing the retail psyche to react to the erosion of the petro-euro-dollar system. With the sun ruling the sovereign sphere and the moon ruling the retail psyche, the market experiences a violent tug-of-war between top-down regulatory moves and bottom-up trader sentiment, leading to a scramble for safety as the old maritime and energy-based trade structures face an inevitable dissolution. A critical anchor for this transition is the exact Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the start of Aries in the first house. Archetypally, this configuration represents the dissolution of structural identity and the death and rebirth of global economic self-definition. Just as past meetings of these planets coincided with the collapse of major geopolitical blocs, this conjunction signals the transition from a unipolar world to a multipolar Aquarian paradigm. The first house placement suggests a painful but transformative redefinition of reserve value, where the old order of fiat-centric markets gives way to decentralized ledgers and commodity-backed digital assets. This structural confusion is further amplified by Pluto in the 11th house of collective will, suggesting a fundamental restructuring of how the global community defines and stores value. The square between Mars in Pisces and Uranus in Taurus, second house of wealth, introduces a signature of sudden, disruptive volatility. This aspect often manifests as a black swan event, potentially involving maritime blockages or physical damage to energy infrastructure, such as the Strait of Hormuz or major oil fields. As Uranus in the second house demands a technological revaluation of monetary assets, this disruption acts as the breaking point for the dollar-denominated oil trade. However, the tension is momentarily eased by a benefic trine from the Sun to Jupiter in the fourth house and a sextile from the Moon to the same Jupiter. This reinforces a strategic pivot toward home-based, local assets and sovereign protectionism, driving capital into gold, silver, and a safe haven commodities to secure domestic interests against global instability. Looking through the lens of a 6-month cycle that began with the last Virgo new moon, this eclipse represents the visible culmination of a transition from a soft of fiat assets to a mixed reserve system. Transition timeline from Petro-Dollar to gold crypto reserves. Regarding the specific timeline for the dissolution of the Petro-Dollar reserve system accelerates post-eclipse. The given astrological configuration speaks to the death of the Petro-Dollar reserve system not as a sudden catastrophe but as a dissolving boundary between traditional commodity-backed valuations and the nebulous, network-oriented digital asset sphere. Neptune's dissolving influence erodes the remaining credibility of the Saudi American Security for Oil Compact. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz represents the 12th house Piscean maritime blockage made manifest, while the damage to eastern Saudi fields reflects the Mars in Pisces' violent disruption of energy supply. The first phase, March-April, is characterized by acute oil price spikes and a rush to gold, silver and a flight to safety crypto. Within the 3-month window, as Jupiter stations direct in Cancer on March 10, we anticipate the formal announcement of bilateral oil for gold settlement mechanisms between major energy producers and consumer nations, bypassing dollar intermediaries. By May-June, the market is likely to begin to absorb the supply shock. Central banks negotiate bilateral agreements to settle oil trades in gold-linked stablecoins, while major oil exporters announce pilot programs for BT-denominated invoicing. July-August could see the rollout of a gold crypto reserve basket, GCRB, endorsed by a coalition of BRICS plus nations, providing a quasi-official benchmark that reduces reliance on the dollar. As nations pivot toward gold and silver to secure their domestic interests, the infrastructure for a dual reserve system, part gold bullion rehypothecation, part blockchain settlement, is expected to achieve critical mass within 6 months, rendering the old Petro-Dollar architecture functionally obsolete. By the 6-month new moon in Virgo, the transition to a new monetary paradigm is expected to be well underway. The infrastructure for a dual reserve system, part gold bullion rehypothecation, part blockchain settlement, may achieve critical mass, rendering the old Petro-Dollar and SWIFT architecture functionally obsolete though still nominally utilized in legacy contracts. This transition is disorderly rather than catastrophic, characterized by the Saturn-Neptune signature of structural confusion giving way to Aries-ruled new competitive monetary blocks. By September, the GCRB is reflected in the pricing of futures contracts on major exchanges, and the DXY shows a statistically significant downward trend. The full transition, a credible alternative reserve architecture, will be evident by the end of the year, though full adoption will continue into 2027. The Decoupling Event. Days around the 3/3 eclipse and the following 2 weeks, the Great Exposure and the Financial Flashpoint. This eclipse operates along the axis of the 6th and 12th houses, creating a profound tension between the analytical, utility-driven scrutiny of the masses and the obscured, institutional maneuvers occurring behind the scenes. The opposition between the Sun in Pisces and the Moon in Virgo carries an immediate and explosive flash event. This is a moment of maximal structural tension where hidden liquidations by market makers, represented by the 12th house Sun, collide with the technical support levels monitored by retail traders, represented by the 6th house Moon. The presence of Mercury Retrograde in Pisces further complicates this landscape, suggesting that initial economic data and market headlines will likely be fraught with misinformation or subject to significant future revisions, leading to a climate of pervasive panic and confusion. The Virgo-Pisces axis embodies the tension between micro-level technical utility and macro-level systemic dissolution. A profound structural climax within the global financial architecture, initiating a period of revelation and purification across markets. The immediate day of the eclipse is anticipated to bring a sharp emotional capitulation in retail sentiment, swiftly followed by a volatile snapback rally as markets process the seismic shifts underway. With the moon occupying the sixth house, which governs labor, debt, and service, this eclipse compels a critical audit or harvest of all existing financial obligations. Concurrently, a significant Pisces stellium resides in the 12th house, encompassing the Sun, Mercury Retrograde, Venus, and Mars. This configuration strongly suggests that the primary drivers of this market event are unfolding behind closed doors, involving hidden enemies, intricate sovereign debt negotiations, and the dissolution of long-held illusions. For the eclipse day itself, the market forecast predicts extreme volatility and a significant liquidity flush, where retail sentiment, symbolized by the moon, reacts acutely to technical breakdowns, while institutional players, represented by the 12th house, strategically reposition in the shadows. The broader macroeconomic environment is set to undergo violent fluctuations, particularly within the energy and currency sectors. The separating Mars-Uranus square indicates that while the initial shocks to energy infrastructure, such as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz or damage to Saudi oil fields, may have already sparked volatility, the ripple effects continue to destabilize the global stage. Investors should anticipate an initial spike in the US dollar index followed quickly by a correction of confidence, as the credibility of the petrodollar narrative is called into question. As the sixth house moon brings the mechanics of commodity logistics into sharp focus, oil prices are expected to spike sharply. In this atmosphere of systemic risk, capital is likely to flee risk-on digital assets in favor of the tangible security of gold and silver, which stand to receive measurable inflows as safe havens. Despite the intraday panic and the potential for fat finger errors or technical glitches caused by Mercury's retrograde motion, a stabilizing undercurrent remains. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, positioned in the 4th house, forms a supportive trine to the Sun and a sextile to the Moon. This suggests that sovereign wealth funds and deeply held value reserves may intervene to provide a floor for the markets, preventing an absolute systemic collapse. However, the fated nature of this period is emphasized by the vertex and part of fortune opposing Saturn and Neptune while trining Uranus. This configuration points to algorithmic trading systems reacting violently to geopolitical headlines, creating cascading liquidations followed by rapid, volatile recoveries in decentralized alternatives. The 2 weeks following the eclipse will remain characterized by this bearish volatile sentiment, where retail panic selling is met by institutional accumulation, ultimately leading to a sharp, sentiment-driven drop that eventually finds a firm level of support for a tech-driven rebound. March 4th to 8th, post-eclipse relief, March 6th, Venus enters Aries. This period, from March 4th to 7th, is generally seen as a post-eclipse relief, particularly as Venus enters Aries on March 6th, marking a significant transition in market dynamics. The Sun is traversing Pisces until the Vernal Equinox, March 20th, casting an influence of intuitive and less tangible forces over the broader economic landscape. This watery energy is infused with optimism and clear communication around financial matters as the Sun forms a harmonious trine with expansive Jupiter on March 5th, immediately followed by a conjunction with Mercury on March 7th. This combination is highly conducive to growth and positive news, particularly benefiting sectors aligned with Jupiter's expansive influence, such as Bitcoin and XRP's future aspirations. Simultaneously, value perception, governed by Venus, resides in Pisces until March 6th, fostering idealistic values, compassion, and a philanthropic approach to finance. An early harbinger of change arrives on March 4th, with Venus forming a sextile to innovative Uranus, hinting at surprising value emerging from unconventional assets and creating a brief, bullish window for groundbreaking altcoins in the ISO-compatible DeFi, Web3, and AI sectors. A shift occurs on March 6th as Venus enters fiery Aries, dramatically altering market sentiment from passive hope to active, even assertive pursuit. This ingress repositions value perception from mere potential to immediate utility and a drive for market dominance. For assets like Bitcoin, positioned in its 9th house of expansion, and XRP in its 8th house of shared resources and transformation, this transit encourages pioneering ventures and a heightened appetite for financial risk-taking. However, this impulsive energy is swiftly tempered by subsequent alignments. Around March 7, Venus forms a conjunction with nebulous Neptune in Aries, which can lead to an idealized, perhaps even illusory, view of asset values, potentially creating confusion and fueling irrational exuberance, particularly for speculative altcoins. It urges caution against overly optimistic projections and highlights the risk of an idealized view of asset values. This idealistic surge is promptly followed by a grounding influence on March 8, when Venus conjuncts disciplined Saturn in Aries. This aspect introduces a dose of reality and structure, demanding discipline and responsibility within financial endeavors. It suggests a stabilization in market movements after initial enthusiasm, emphasizing the need for concrete plans and sustainable growth. March 10, Jupiter retrograde, direct station in Cancer, the foundation of financial growth, cryptocurrencies evolving value. The period surrounding March 10 to 11, 2026, is marked by Jupiter's transition to direct motion in Cancer. This celestial event, with its profound implications for institutional players such as large banks and asset managers, suggests a strategic recalibration towards reinforcing domestic financial security and assets intrinsically linked to real estate. These influential entities are likely to engage in a quiet aggregation of robust, safe haven investments as they meticulously reevaluate their long-term growth trajectories and risk profiles. The direct movement of Jupiter in Cancer heralds an anticipated substantial influx of liquidity, primarily originating from domestic financial institutions including national banks and insurance conglomerates, which will seek and find equilibrium within the market's newly solidified framework. Jupiter's forward progression in Cancer, activating Bitcoin's 12th house and XRP's 11th house, injects a renewed sense of optimism and amplifies the potential for significant growth across the cryptocurrency landscape. This expansive energy is further bolstered by supportive astrological aspects, including the Sun's trine on March 5 and Mars's trine on March 22, which collectively foster an environment conducive to substantial capital injections and favor speculative assets. Specifically, around March 10, the sextile aspect between Venus and Pluto hints at profound shifts in how value is both perceived and established within the market. For Bitcoin, this Jupiter direct station may manifest as a period of accelerated, albeit perhaps understated, institutional adoption and an underlying fortification of its value, aligning with the hidden growth often associated with the 12th house. Meanwhile, XRP's positioning within the 11th house under this direct Jupiter transit suggests a surge in community enthusiasm, significant technological advancements, and the forging of stronger strategic alliances and partnerships. On a broader scale, these developments are expected to coalesce into a global sentiment that favors stable, value-preserving assets for the new market structures. Overall, the market sentiment is predicted to lean bullish for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum and precious metals, as global confidence gradually stabilizes. March 13, Mars, North Node conjunction. Mid-March, action, transformation, and new beginnings. The alignment on March 13 serves as a pivotal turning point for the cryptocurrency market as Mars conjuncts the North Node in Pisces. This placement directly impacts Bitcoin's 8th house of shared resources and transformative finances, while simultaneously influencing XRP's 7th house of partnerships and legal resolutions. This conjunction signals a powerful surge of fated action toward a collective karmic path, suggesting that institutional developments and strategic investments made during this window are deeply aligned with long-term growth and connectivity. However, this forward momentum faces immediate friction on March 14 when Mars squares Lilith. This aspect introduces the risk of hidden agendas, rebellious undercurrents, and unexpected market shifts that could expose psychological vulnerabilities within the trading community. Because of these conflicting forces, the market sentiment during the middle of the month is characterized as neutral to volatile, as the drive for progress is temporarily challenged by internal or secret disruptions. The atmosphere begins to stabilize and gain positive traction as the month progresses, culminating in a Mars trine to Jupiter on March 22. This alignment fosters expansive and optimistic action, allowing the earlier confusion and volatility to subside. As the influence of the North Node propels growth in strategically aligned sectors, the overall market sentiment for Bitcoin, XRP, and the broader crypto space shifts from early uncertainty toward a more decisive bullish trend by the month's end. March 18, FOMC Economic Projections and Fed Press Conference. Navigating the financial crossroads, the celestial stage, Pisces dominance. The chart for the day before the Pisces new moon is dominated by a watery stellium. The Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Mars all sit in Pisces. In whole sign house terms, this lights the 7th house for XRP and the 8th for Bitcoin, sectors that govern partnerships, shared resources, and deep financial transformation. The Piscean tone invites intuition but also illusion, urging traders to watch liquidity flows and beware of deceptive market currents. Regulators in a Pisces fog, Venus in fiery Aries activates the 8th house for XRP and the 9th for Bitcoin, injecting aggressive value seeking. Saturn, Neptune conjunct in Aries casts a long-term structural shadow over the same houses, suggesting that central banks and regulators will act cautiously, perhaps confused by the misty Piscean desire for harmony. Mercury's retrograde in Pisces further muddies official communications, making statements open-ended and prone to multiple interpretations. A Sun-Uranus sextile offers a sliver of innovative surprise, while a separating Venus-Jupiter square warns against over-optimism that could trigger later corrections. The trader's inner tension, with the Virgo ascendant opposing the Pisces Sun-Moon, a psychological split emerges. Analytical, detail-oriented instincts clash with the prevailing market narrative. The North Node conjunct Mercury in Pisces pushes the collective to learn how to navigate ambiguity, whereas Lilith square Mercury and Mars awakens hidden resentments and a pull toward unconventional, possibly speculative, plays. This suggests that public narratives may be challenged, fostering indecision and emotional swings. Market sectors in brief: stocks, the Sun-Uranus sextile hint at pockets of unexpected upside. Expect a mixed performance with a slight bias toward resilient, adaptable sectors. US dollar index, DXY, Saturn Neptune in Aries raises doubts about fiat stability, possibly prompting devaluation pressures. Nevertheless, the public's craving for safety could draw modest safe haven inflows, keeping the DXY largely neutral. Precious metals, structural anxieties, Saturn-Neptune, bolster gold and silver as hedges. The overall tone leans bullish for XAU and XAG. Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and XRP, their 8th-7th houses bathed in Pisces focus attention on value exchange and partnerships. Saturn-Neptune urges a sober reassessment of long-term propositions, but Venus-Aries fuels aggressive accumulation if narrative turns favorable. Sentiment is cautiously bullish. Ethereum and DeFi, the same Saturn-Neptune aspect raises regulatory scrutiny, yet Sun-Uranus sextile opens rooms for technical breakthroughs, especially in decentralized stablecoins. Expect a slightly bullish outlook. Web3 and AI altcoins, strong Uranus aspects point to sudden spikes and market excitement, supporting a slightly bullish stance. Privacy coins, Pisces hidden water vibe raises demand for secrecy, but Saturn-Neptune warns of possible crackdowns. Lilith-Mercury tension may surface regulatory friction, keeping sentiment neutral to slightly bearish. Bottom line, the Pisces-tinted FOMC chart paints a day of heightened intuition, ambiguous communication, and structural reevaluation across financial tiers. Pragmatic analysis must be balanced against the collective pull toward speculative, emotionally charged moves. A neutral to cautiously optimistic posture, adjusting positions as clearer signals emerge, will likely serve traders best. March 19th, New Moon in Pisces. The new moon in Pisces, especially in the context of recent eclipses, represents a critical juncture for the crypto market, potentially signaling a significant turning point and a profound sense of renewal. As traditional and emerging financial assets navigate new paradigms of value, this time demands both speculative agility and a strong focus on structural clarity and sustainable growth. The sextile aspect between the Sun and Moon with Uranus, along with Fortune's connection to Uranus, further suggests potential for innovative breakthroughs and unexpected positive developments in financial arenas. The harmonious Mars trine Jupiter aspect also lends supportive energy to taking action and expanding possibilities in these evolving financial landscapes. The new moon in Pisces on March 19 heralds a significant period for both Bitcoin and XRP, ushering in fresh financial beginnings. For Bitcoin, this new moon activates its 8th house, a domain deeply connected to shared resources, debt, and transformative financial endeavors. This suggests a potent time for new developments concerning collective capital, potential restructuring of debts, or the emergence of new forms of borrowing and lending. The Piscean influence, amplified by Mercury and Venus also in Pisces, brings an element of idealism or perhaps a degree of ambiguity to these complex financial matters, demanding careful consideration and clear-sighted evaluation of any new financial ventures or collaborations that arise. Concurrently, XRP finds this new moon illuminating its 7th house, the realm of partnerships, alliances, and open enemies. This placement indicates that new beginnings are likely to manifest in the sphere of trading relationships, joint ventures, or significant contracts. The influence of Mercury and Venus in Pisces on this house further suggests that these new partnerships may be founded on idealistic aspirations or innovative, perhaps even unconventional, approaches to collaboration. However, the Piscean tendency towards blurred lines also necessitates a mindful awareness to discern genuine opportunities from those that may be less clearly defined. Overall, this lunation presents a carefully bullish outlook for developing new financial partnerships, engaging in debt restructuring, or exploring transformative investment opportunities, particularly within the cryptocurrency space. March 20th, Mercury Retrograde stations direct in Pisces, Mercury's resurgence. Information flow and reassessment. From March 1st through March 20th, Mercury moves retrograde through Pisces, creating a period defined by reassessment and potential confusion within the financial markets. For Bitcoin, this transit impacts the 8th house of shared resources and debt, while for XRP, it influences the 7th house of partnerships and legal binds. This fog of war phase often leads to delays in communication, technical glitches, and price action, driven more by rumors than concrete fundamentals. Traders should be cautious of liquidity illusions and false breakouts during the first half of the month, as the flow of information is frequently clouded by retracted statements and misleading news. Specific astrological aspects during this retrograde period further complicate the market landscape. On March 9th, a trine between Mercury and Jupiter offers a window for optimistic but perhaps premature reevaluations. This is followed on March 15th by a conjunction with Mars, which may trigger impulsive decisions, hasty market reversals, or aggressive but confusing communication. By March 16th, a square to Lilith warns of hidden agendas or suppressed information affecting high-level negotiations. During this time, the prevailing market sentiment remains neutral to bearish, favoring caution and the review of existing contracts over the initiation of new, complex financial instruments. As the retrograde period nears its conclusion, the new moon in Pisces on March 19th provides a brief moment for intuitive insights into institutional funds and regulatory frameworks. This serves as a vital transition to March 20th, when Mercury stations direct. Coinciding with the spring equinox and the sun's entry into Aries, this alignment marks the astrological new year and injects fresh, assertive energy into the crypto space. The lifting of the retrograde veil from Bitcoin's 8th house and XRP's 7th house allows for a much better understanding of institutional flows and partnership dynamics. The final 10 days of March see a decisive shift toward bullish sentiment as clarity returns and market data integrity improves. Decisions that were previously muddled or delayed can now move forward with greater certainty and institutional support. Aggressive moves by BRICS Plus nations to formalize gold-backed settlements as Mercury goes direct are likely. While a final square between Mercury and Lilith on March 28 may bring one last revelation or hidden truth to light, the overall momentum is characterized by resolution and forward motion. This period enables traders to integrate the lessons learned during the review phase, facilitating smoother operations and more accurate information dissemination across all major crypto assets. March 20th, Sun's ingress into Aries, Vernal Equinox, astrological new year, the solar influence, guiding light through Pisces and Aries. During the Sun's transit through Pisces, until March 20th, Bitcoin's financial energy is focused on shared resources, debt, transformations, and partnerships, as indicated by its 8th house placement. Similarly, XRP's 7th house placement emphasizes the importance of partnerships. This phase brings themes of dissolution, hidden markets, and a search for universal connection in financial dealings, though it carries potential for idealism alongside risks of confusion. Optimism in collective resources was supported by the Sun trine Jupiter on March 5, while the Sun conjunct Mercury on March 7 brought focused deliberation to these complex areas. Unexpected and innovative solutions in shared wealth or partnerships were possible with the Sun sextile Uranus on March 18. As the Sun moves into Aries on March 20, marking the spring equinox and the astrological new year, there is a significant shift in market dynamics. This ingress is in Bitcoin's 9th house, suggesting a bullish breakout potentially driven by international news and new ventures. For XRP, the transition into the 8th house signifies a move towards deeper financial integration and transformative shared resources. The overall energy becomes pioneering, aggressive, and focused on decisive action in new markets, igniting a spirit of fresh starts and risk-taking. This period favors bold moves and innovation, driving an optimistic expansion into new financial frontiers, though inherent volatility and speculative risks need to be managed. Following the Aries ingress, the latter half of the month presents a duality. The Sun conjunct Neptune on March 22 injects creativity and inspiration, potentially fueling innovation in speculative assets like cryptocurrencies. However, this is tempered by the Sun conjunct Saturn on March 25, which introduces a dose of reality, imposing limitations, and a need for structured, perhaps more conservative, approaches. This tension between visionary ideals and practical constraints, where euphoric rallies may encounter regulatory or structural headwinds, becomes a defining feature. The conjunction of the Sun and Saturn, governing market makers and regulators, suggests a potentially bearish influence on regulatory clarity. This could manifest as imposed restrictions or tighter market controls, creating a ceiling for price action. Despite these challenges, the overall market sentiment shifts from neutral to bearish for traditional debt or unclear partnerships in the first half, to bullish for innovative assets and proactive market participation in the second half. March 22 to 25, conjunction of the Sun with Saturn and Neptune, sextile Pluto. March 25 marks a significant astrological convergence, with the Sun conjuncting Saturn and Neptune while also forming a sextile to Pluto. This powerful alignment signals a period of profound structural change and a regulatory reset across global financial systems. Market makers and government bodies are poised to implement stricter limitations or announce heavy-handed frameworks, effectively acting as a hand of the regulator to impose a bearish ceiling on overextended assets and foster more disciplined trading ranges. This environment is initially shaped by the Sun's conjunction to Neptune in Aries around March 22, which can foster grand visions for future financial systems and lead to significant visionary pronouncements, particularly for Web3 and AI altcoins. However, the subsequent Sun-Saturn conjunction on March 25 introduces a grounding force, demanding structure, discipline, and realism. Historically, the Sun's conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in early Aries coincides with the end of speculative bubbles and the birth of new regulatory frameworks. This dynamic acts as a pressure cooker that culls weak assets, ensuring that only those with true utility and institutional backing survive the restrictive pressure and participate in the new astrological year's growth. This period is also seen as a definitive bridge between legacy finance and the fully integrated digital asset economy, with March 2026 anticipated as a culmination point. Further reinforcing this theme of deep structural reform, the Sun's sextile to Pluto on March 25, alongside Saturn's sextile to Pluto on March 28, points to a powerful restructuring of the established financial order and a consolidation of power. With Saturn residing in Aries, influencing sectors like international finance and speculative markets, affecting Bitcoin's 9th and XRP's 8th houses, and Pluto in Aquarius driving transformation in partnerships and daily operations. Relevant to Bitcoin's 7th and XRP's 6th houses, regulatory authorities are likely to impose stricter controls and guidelines on financial systems. While this environment may cause a temporary correction in overextended assets, it ultimately aims to solidify market structure. Consequently, market sentiment is expected to be neutral to bullish for visionary altcoins with solid fundamentals, but bearish for those built primarily on hype. A unique opportunity for healing financial wounds through new approaches emerges on March 26, when Venus conjuncts Chiron. March 28, Saturn sextile Pluto, Venus enters Taurus. March 30, emergence of a new framework. The financial landscape shifts towards a structured rebuilding phase at the end of March. Mercury's direct motion in Pisces and the Sun's entry into Aries around March 20 signal a more grounded yet determined approach to system construction. The key astrological event is the Saturn sextile Pluto on March 28. This highly supportive aspect ushers in the emergence of new frameworks, facilitating a profound yet structured transformation of financial power. Governments and powerful financial entities are expected to collaboratively laying the groundwork for a new, more resilient global financial system. The sextile between Saturn and Pluto, exact March 28, is a critical structural aspect, indicating that the regulatory frameworks, Saturn, being built now will solidify the power structures, Pluto, of the future. This is a hard cap on speculative excess, forcing the market to mature rapidly. This period is ideal for the announcement or establishment of legislative frameworks for new global financial protocols. These could involve a gold-backed digital standard or the initial stages of a wholesale central bank digital currency (CBDC) system. A quiet or incremental resetting of Treasury gold prices, perhaps through changes in accounting standards or official declarations of its role as a reserve asset, could be initiated here to provide a new foundation for perceived stability and confidence. Astrologically, the Saturn-Pluto sextile offers opportunities for constructive transformation, empowering a rapid, coordinated international effort to introduce new financial architecture, including frameworks for digital currencies and a reevaluation of sovereign reserves. With Pluto in Aquarius, this aspect also implies fundamental shifts in power dynamics within partnerships and legal structures, potentially leading to major changes in how regulatory bodies interact with the crypto space or the emergence of new power structures within the industry. For precious metals, these deep structural changes could further highlight their role as a fundamental store of value, potentially boosting demand, while the DXY might also experience a structural reevaluation in its global standing. Market sentiment during this period is expected to be bullish for established cryptocurrencies like BTC, XRP, and ETH, as well as precious metals, as structural transformations tend to favor assets with strong foundational shifts. The month concludes with Venus entering Taurus on March 30th. This signifies a return to valuing stable, tangible assets and material security, shifting focus towards more established and enduring value propositions. With Venus in Bitcoin's 10th house and XRP's 9th house, this position reinforces a desire for tangible growth, corporate integrity, and a focus on reputation and long-term international financial relationships. This configuration fosters a desire to consolidate gains and encourages value-driven investments, contributing to a bullish sentiment for long-term holders in BTC, XRP, ETH, and other established cryptocurrencies. Asset-specific analysis, Bitcoin, BTC vernal transformation, from deep liquidation to global expansion. Bitcoin begins the month navigating the transformative and often volatile waters of its 8th house in Pisces, where the presence of the Sun, Mars, and a retrograde Mercury demands a rigorous audit of shared debts, hidden leverage, and complex capital flows. This alchemical period suggests a consolidation under pressure, as the market is forced to confront vulnerabilities in financial agreements and the exposure of hidden liabilities. The pivotal lunar eclipse on March 3, occurring in Bitcoin's 2nd house of personal assets and resources, serves as a major catalyst for price discovery. This lunar event is likely to trigger a significant flush out of weak hands and retail positions, illuminating harsh truths about liquidity while forcing a sobering reassessment of the asset's intrinsic worth. Throughout the first 3 weeks of March, the Mercury retrograde cycle within the 8th house maintains a climate of caution and reevaluation, particularly regarding derivatives and institutional leverage. This phase is characterized by high volatility and a neutral to bearish sentiment as traders navigate potential exchange glitches, liquidity dry-ups, or delays in financial communications. However, the energy begins to shift around March 13 when Mars conjuncts the North Node, sparking an assertive impulse toward a more pioneering future. This conjunction acts as a powerful catalyst, moving the narrative away from internal debt concerns and toward a visionary expansion of the Bitcoin ecosystem, setting the stage for the new moon in Pisces on March 19 to plant seeds of transformation within shared investment structures. As the Sun enters Aries on March 20 and moves into Bitcoin's 9th house, the market sentiment undergoes a decisive bullish pivot. The focus transitions from the psychological depths of shared liabilities to the expansive heights of international sentiment, legal breakthroughs, and the integration of new financial philosophies. With Mercury turning direct and joining the Sun and Venus in the 9th house, the earlier period of confusion gives way to external validation and assertive growth. This transit emphasizes Bitcoin's destiny as a global frontier asset, likely benefiting from positive regulatory developments in foreign jurisdictions and a renewed sense of institutional purpose that transcends domestic market stagnation. The month concludes with a notable surge in public status and institutional authority as Venus enters Taurus and Bitcoin's 10th house on March 30. This ingress stabilizes the gains made during the Aries season, suggesting a post-equinox rally driven by a shift from internal volatility to a solidified public reputation. As Uranus continues its long-term disruptive influence in the 10th house, the final days of March mark a significant step towards structural institutional adoption. The digital alchemist successfully transforms the month's initial pressures into a robust, high-status position, where the integration of disruptive technology and traditional institutional frameworks begins to reach a more harmonious and profitable equilibrium. XRP, XLM and ISO DeFi outlook. For XRP, the month of March opens under the potent influence of the Virgo lunar eclipse in the 1st house of identity, marking a transformative turning point for XRP and the broader ISO DeFi sector. This celestial event on March 3 functions as a catalyst for a profound shift in market perception, as the analytical precision of the Virgo moon seeks to clear the prevailing regulatory fog. While the Pisces Sun illuminates previously hidden institutional adoption corridors, particularly those involving cross-border oil settlement tokenization, The eclipse in the first house forces a public revelation regarding the asset's core utility. This period marks the transition of XRP from a scrutinized speculative asset into a recognized bridge currency, poised to benefit from heightened global demand for efficient, immediate settlement amid escalating geopolitical volatility. Navigating the 7th house, legal reevaluations and partnership stalls. Throughout the first two-thirds of the month, the astrological focus remains heavily concentrated in the 7th house of partnerships, contracts, and open adversaries. With the Sun, Mars, Venus, and a retrograde Mercury all transiting Pisces, the environment is characterized by intense scrutiny from regulators and the other side of legal disputes. Mercury's retrograde motion in this sector suggests that old legal battles and stalled negotiations will return to the forefront, likely resulting in false starts in price action and a sense of institutional ambiguity. While there is an idealistic drive toward universal connectivity, the retrograde energy demands a period of renegotiation and the revisiting of adoption timelines, potentially causing a temporary plateau in market sentiment as the industry waits for clarity in legal frameworks. The 8th house shift, transformative capital and debt restructuring. A decisive energetic shift occurs as the inner planets begin their ingress into Aries, activating the 8th house of joint finances, shared resources, and transformative capital. The conjunction of Mars and the North Node on March 13 serves as a powerful signal for directed action, aligning the karmic path of ISO-compatible assets with the development of massive liquidity solutions. This 8th house emphasis suggests a period of profound restructuring, where debt obligations are settled and large-scale transfers of wealth begin to manifest. As Jupiter stations direct in the stabilizing sign of Cancer, these digital assets are increasingly perceived as the safe harbor within a reconstructed financial infrastructure, offering the necessary resilience to navigate the systemic pressures of the Saturn and Aries transit. International integration and the proof-based financial era. As the Sun enters Aries on March 20, the focus on settlements and transformative partnership models intensifies, leading toward a final resolution of long-standing legal or debt-related obstacles. The momentum shifts toward international expansion on March 30 as Venus enters Taurus, activating the 9th house of foreign trade and higher law. This progression indicates that XRP, XLM, and their DeFi allies are ready to scale within traditional foreign exchange corridors, facilitating a decoupling from legacy financial markets. With Jupiter and Mercury moving direct, the market gains the clarity required for a definitive transition. This marks the twilight of the faith-based fiat era and the emergence of a Virgoan, proof-based digital landscape, where gold and code-backed assets become the essential architects of global liquidity. Post-eclipse, XRP stands out with a distinctly bullish score of 7 out of 10. Ethereum, Ethereum, as the foundational smart contract platform, navigates these currents with its own unique dynamics. Uranus in Taurus continues to benefit ETH, aligning with narratives around innovative financial structures and hard money alternatives, as the crypto space redefines tangible value. March begins with Venus traversing Aries, in close proximity to Saturn and Neptune, which suggests heightened volatility for ETH, particularly concerning its deflationary mechanics and staking yields. This archetypal configuration points to a reevaluation of financial values within a pioneering, sometimes aggressive, new market. A significant bullish signal emerges around March 22, as action-oriented Mars forms a harmonious trine with expansive Jupiter, likely fueling a substantial rally in DeFi applications built on Ethereum. This aspect signifies dynamic growth and the successful execution of innovative initiatives. As Jupiter stations direct, Ethereum's pivotal role as the home and cornerstone of decentralized finance becomes even more pronounced, clarifying paths for development and expansion. However, the persistent structural resistance from Saturn in Aries continues to challenge ETH, particularly regarding issues like high gas fees and network congestion, underscoring the imperative for scalable, robust solutions in this new financial frontier. ISO DeFi, Web3 and AI altcoins, the current celestial landscape forms a profound backdrop for the realm of decentralized finance, Web3, and AI altcoins. Pluto's ongoing journey through Aquarius heralds a systemic transformation of power dynamics within community-driven networks and technological innovation, signaling a long-term bullish trajectory for these future-oriented sectors. Simultaneously, Uranus in Taurus continues its disruptive influence, radically altering traditional financial institutions and established value systems. This ongoing revolution naturally benefits innovative technologies centered on new forms of wealth and resource management. Adding to this complex tapestry, the confluence of Neptune, Saturn, and Chiron in pioneering Aries highlights a period of both immense idealism and critical challenges. While Neptune fuels speculative enthusiasm and visionary potential, Saturn demands structured, responsible development, setting firm boundaries and addressing practical limitations. Chiron encourages the healing of past vulnerabilities embedded within these nascent fields, urging a collective maturation. Furthermore, Mars conjunct the North Node emphasizes a potent collective drive towards the adoption and integration of these transformative technologies. The broader landscape of Web3 and AI-related altcoins is likely to experience choppy price action throughout March, influenced by Mercury Retrograde forming squares to Lilith around the 16th and 28th. These aspects often expose uncomfortable truths, revealing flaws in overly hyped narratives or uncovering hidden agendas within technological leadership. For specific ISO DeFi, Web3, and AI altcoins positioned as infrastructure for an emerging reserve system, March may see a modest rise as institutional curiosity translates into early-stage capital allocation. Pluto in Aquarius remains the ultimate long-term bullish indicator, symbolizing a deep, systemic overhaul of financial infrastructure. However, the first 3 weeks of March are marked by Mercury retrograde in Pisces, archetypally influencing themes of shared resources, debt, and profound transformation. This transit poses a distinct risk of hidden bugs or security exploits in smart contracts, as clarity can be elusive in areas of collective financial agreement. As the Sun conjuncts Neptune in late March, activating themes of higher ideals and distant horizons, there is a period of high innovation alongside significant illusion. Projects lacking genuine utility may experience aggressive, purely speculative pumps. Altcoins associated with Web3 and artificial intelligence face a more volatile outlook in March, marked by the Mercury squared Lilith aspects on the 16th and 28th. These astrological configurations tend to expose underlying flaws within hyped narratives or reveal veiled agendas within the leadership of technological innovation. While the long-term influence of Pluto in Aquarius undoubtedly supports bullish sentiment for AI development, the immediate March forecast points towards a rotation of capital. Investors may shift their focus away from purely speculative AI ventures and towards crypto assets that prioritize privacy and security. This shift could see privacy altcoins benefit from a localized surge around the aforementioned Sun-Neptune conjunction on March 22, as the market collectively searches for invisibility and protection from the increasingly watchful regulatory gaze symbolized by Saturn. As Venus enters Taurus around March 30, the market's focus sharply shifts towards tangible utility and revenue-generating protocols. This celestial movement typically instigates a rotation of capital away from speculative hype and towards established Web3 infrastructure that demonstrates concrete value and sustainable economic models. Privacy altcoins, Monero, XMR, Zcash. Privacy-focused altcoins, deeply connected to the archetypal energies of Pluto and the 12th house, signify a collective yearning for financial discretion and hidden realms. As Jupiter, the planet of expansion and abundance, transits through Cancer, occupying the 12th house for Bitcoin's foundational energies, this suggests a burgeoning collective desire for financial privacy and robust protection. However, the period around the Sun's conjunction with Saturn in Pisces, occurring in late March, introduces a potent astrological signal of regulatory reckoning. Within this celestial alignment, privacy altcoins may prepare for intense scrutiny, with the potential for rumors or even concrete actions related to their crackdown. Historically, such transits often manifest as a buy the rumor, sell the news phenomenon, where anticipation of regulation fuels a price surge, only to be followed by a sharp correction when official pronouncements are less severe than feared or when the feared regulations are actually enacted. Despite these potential regulatory headwinds, privacy-focused altcoins are likely to maintain a generally neutral market posture. A niche demand for anonymity, amplified by geopolitical uncertainties, will be a persistent underlying current. This underlying desire for covert financial operations will be balanced by a prevailing market risk aversion and concerns surrounding disruptions to supply chains, which could temper broader enthusiasm. The Sun and Neptune's conjunction on March 22, however, offers a specific window where privacy altcoins may experience a localized surge. This celestial event reflects an impetus within the collective consciousness to seek invisibility and sanctuary, driven by a heightened awareness of increasing regulatory oversight and the structural demands imposed by Saturn's transits. The aspiration for anonymity and secure digital boundaries becomes a pronounced theme as the collective's vision becomes blurred with an urgent need for a secure haven. The dollar index, DXY, and stablecoin markets, the twilight of fiat hegemony. The US dollar index, DXY, enters a period of profound structural erosion, currently registering a bearish score of 3 as the archetypal foundations of the Petro-Dollar face unprecedented systemic challenges. As the month opens, the DXY is submerged in the fluid, dissipative energy of Pisces, further complicated by the slowing momentum of a Mercury retrograde. This signature suggests a period of wavering confidence and a necessary reevaluation of the dollar's foundational strength. With Jupiter in Cancer transitioning from retrograde to direct motion, the global focus shifts toward domestic security and foundational reserves, prompting a deeper reassessment of what constitutes a safe haven. This maritime Piscean influence, coupled with Pluto's transit through Aquarius, continues to exert significant pressure on centralized currency dominance, favoring the emergence of decentralized stablecoins and transparent digital alternatives as the market seeks refuge from fiat volatility. The early portion of the month is dominated by a potent lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo, an archetype associated with utility, service, and the meticulous accounting of currency. While eclipse windows often trigger a flight to safety that can cause a temporary spike in the DXY as traders flee crypto volatility, the underlying Saturn-Neptune dissolution suggests this strength is illusory and debt-driven. This Virgo blood moon compels a deep dive into shared resources and past financial entanglements, often resulting in mandatory liquidations within overleveraged commodity futures. As margin requirements adjust to geopolitical instability, retail sentiment, guided by the Virgo moon, pivots sharply toward risk aversion and tangible utility. This shift penalizes speculative narratives while rewarding assets with demonstrable regulatory clarity and physical backing, such as gold-backed settlements favored by the burgeoning BRICS Plus alliance. As the calendar progresses toward mid-month, the astrological climate shifts from the nebulous waters of Pisces toward the assertive, cardinal fire of Aries. On March 18, a critical Venus-Jupiter square acts as a classic bearish signal for the US dollar, indicating an overextension in foreign exchange markets. This transit typically correlates with a risk-on environment where capital aggressively flows out of the dollar and into commodities, equities, and hard assets. While the entrance of the Sun, Mercury, and Venus into Aries can occasionally provide a fear-based bid for the dollar due to rising capital costs, the heavy Piscean presence continues to signal a debasement in sentiment. The dream of persistently low interest rates begins to evaporate, replaced by a hard reality of higher costs and the physical destruction of old energy infrastructures, as evidenced by the separating Mars-Uranus square. The concluding narrative for the DXY is one of forced transition and the emergence of a multipolar financial regime. Geopolitical shifts in the Middle East, particularly those impacting vital shipping lanes and energy fields, highlight the hidden costs, archetypally represented by 12th house themes, of maintaining US dollar hegemony. As the traditional SWIFT system faces challenges, the market's focus shifts toward digital utility protocols like ISO 20022 and tangible assets like gold and silver. This transition suggests that while those stablecoins closely pegged to the DXY may mirror its volatility, decentralized and transparent digital assets are positioned to thrive. The overarching macro theme remains a swift pivot away from the traditional reserve system, as the Saturnian reality of a new financial era takes hold, favoring utility over speculative fiat dominance. Precious metals, gold and silver, XEU, XAG safe havens and value preservation. The resurgence of tangible wealth. The current astrological landscape signals a profound re-evaluation of tangible assets as Uranus continues its transit through Taurus, creating unpredictable volatility while demanding a return to physical stores of value. This systemic shift is further underscored by Pluto in Aquarius, which exerts long-term inflationary pressure on fiat currencies, driving a karmic migration toward non-sovereign assets as indicated by the North Node in Pisces. During the first half of the month, the prevailing Piscean influence, characterized by the Sun's conjunctions with Neptune, acts to dissolve confidence in traditional paper markets and centralized banking structures. This erosion of trust creates a natural vacuum that draws capital toward gold and silver, positioned as the primary beneficiaries of a collective flight to safety. Gold enters this period with a strongly bullish outlook, bolstered by the protective signature of Jupiter in Cancer. In the context of Western whole sign houses, Jupiter's placement in Cancer activates the fourth house archetype of foundational security and ancestral wealth, suggesting a global pivot toward commodity-backed settlement and the strengthening of central bank reserves. The early month lunar eclipse, Jupiter sextile, provides an immediate bullish trigger, while the Mercury retrograde period further incentivizes investors to seek refuge from market confusion in the solar clarity of gold. As a solar and Jupiterian asset, gold functions as the ultimate anchor during these shifts, exhibiting a robust resilience that is expected to peak during the first 3 weeks of March before entering a phase of consolidation. Silver follows a similar bullish trajectory but introduces a more complex archetypal dynamic involving the Moon, Venus, and the labor-oriented 6th house. While gold represents pure monetary preservation, silver's industrial utility aligns with the Virgoan archetype of production and utility. On March 4, the Venus sextile Uranus serves as a potent catalyst for silver, likely sparking sudden upward price movements driven by a convergence of industrial demand and inflationary data. Although its industrial component may occasionally temper the pure exuberance seen in gold, silver's potential to outperform on a percentage basis remains high. As the gold-to-silver ratio begins to narrow, silver benefits from both its role as a monetary hedge and its essential placement in the technological themes of the Aquarian age. As the month progresses toward the Aries equinox, the archetypal energy shifts from Piscean dissolution to Saturnian discipline. The late March conjunction of the Sun and Saturn in the early degrees of Aries demands a hard reality check, forcing a confrontation between illusory fiat valuations and the concrete reality of physical metals. While this Saturnian influence may briefly cool immediate price action or create resistance levels for gold, it serves to solidify the long-term floor for precious metals. A significant turning point arrives on March 22 with the Mars-Jupiter trine, an impulsive and expansive aspect that could see silver break through long-standing resistance. This alignment suggests that as the month concludes, the convergence of monetary hedging and industrial necessity will propel precious metals into a new pioneering phase of price discovery. This concludes our monthly crypto and financial astrology report. Please like, share, and subscribe to support my work. Thank you for watching and see you next time.